think the interesting starting point is, what are the different ways that we can use to control insect pests?
Okay, I think the biggest problem on an equestrian yard is flies. So because they are actually quite a big vector to pathogens and so on.
Yeah.
So
And also, they're really irritating. You walk into a yard and you get this plague of flies just flying at you.
no, definitely. I mean, my wife, there's 3 flies in the house, and she's like, "Die vleerder ons weg." You
We
know,
must
so,
move
yeah,
now.
move and listen. What are you doing? You're working with all these stuff. Why do
Look
we
at
have
this.
flies?
Why do we have 3 flies?
Yeah. So I think the
I'm
biggest.
starting to think we should have gotten another expert, Neil. 3 flies is 3 too many.
All right. Well, no, I think the biggest thing that we need to understand is that flies will be always will be with us, and the amount that you can control. And there's certain methods that you can do this quite effectively. But I think we need to understand the fly life cycle for us to effectively control flies. And I think most of the people living in, like in the States and all those type of things, they're not too sure on what this life cycle looks like.
Well, like, it's weird because some of the yards that you'll go to, there'll be no flies whatsoever. And then there's always the same yards that have fly problems. They're just infested with flies. And I don't know what the factors are like that will contribute towards an increased number of flies within your population.
Do you see a common denominator between the yards?
To me, it's yards that are closely surrounded by water. So water and yards that have a large number of horses, because there seems to be a lot of manure around. And I mean, these yards are top yards, and they spend all day trying to control these flies. And sometimes, the environment is just against you.
I think something that we've seen, especially in the pig and poultry industry in the past 2 weeks, well, 3 weeks almost, with this heat that we've had. So we've had all this heat, but not a lot of rain or moisture. I've seen, obviously, the past 3 days, there's been a bit of moisture in the air, but it started off with a bang. I mean, we literally had no.
So is heat the primary thing that brings on the?
Heat is one of the factors. I think the time of year, it's actually quite interesting and to see how it's like they've got a biological clock. End of from middle August till end of August, beginning of September, and all of a sudden you get this boom, because the heat, especially this year, we had no a spring really.
Yeah, so it just went straight into summer. It was horrifying.
Yeah. So, and I think we're all like, listen, what just happened, type of thing.
I'm very nervous for February.
Yeah, and I mean that's one of the biggest factors. The heat and the time of the year, then you get that fly boom.
Also with the midges as well, it's almost when those rains hit and you have the heat and the environment is just primed,
It's like a theme box.
It just, then you get this population explode, and you get this exponential growth, right? Yes. Because, I mean, in the beginning, and with the environment, especially, you have a lot of horses around, a lot of manure around, and then that manure starts getting wet. Because I suppose when it's and you get that warmth coming through, then you just have one fly turns into 2, turns into 4, turns into 16, etc.
Spoke before we started. Well, back in the day, and I'm not going to say how old I am, but when buying a little chappie, then you open the paper and then there's a did you know. So this is a did you know.
A chappie paper knowledge.
Yes, yeah. So a fly in its lifespan of more or less 28 days, if you don't use insecticides, can lay about 500 eggs, and they lay them within 75 to 150
500 eggs.
Yeah, batches of 75 to 150 eggs. And within the winter, what happens is that they lay the eggs. A lot of people think that the fly population gets less in the winter, but it's just because their life cycle just becomes longer.
So are you telling me flies are basically, like in layman's terms, hibernating?
Yes.
This is horrifying.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they lay their eggs in a cluster,
Okay.
and that cluster can actually go through the winter. The eggs on the outside will obviously die off of the cold and so on. But the eggs that's inside of the cluster, that just hibernate.
So
And as
pest
soon
control
as-
has to happen through winter as well, essentially.
To an extent, yes.
Okay.
But obviously it becomes less. So the management of your manure, and we're going to talk about that right a little bit later, is also still important within the winter as well. So the reason why we get this big boom of flies within when the summer starts is because of that hibernating eggs. All of a sudden,
They've
the
stored.
environment
Okay.
is primed, and then all of them just breed
I
out.
didn't know that. That's actually crazy.
That's